the idea that the banks are safe is completely false. The global economic crisis of 2008 cost tens of millions of people their savings, their jobs and their homes. Iceland is a stable democracy with a high standard of living, until recently extremely low unemployment and government debt. But in 2000 the government deregulated the banks, which would have disastrous consequences. These three tiny banks, which had never traded outside of Iceland before, managed to rack up debts of 120 billion, which is 10 times the economy of Iceland, leaving not only its citizens bankrupt, but the entire country. Trillions of dollars of ordinary people's money is locked up in banks around the world in time deposit accounts. And what if one morning you woke up to find the money you thought was yours in the bank actually belonged to the government? This is exactly what happened to those citizens in Cyprus.
This is a country where tonight you can't cash a cheque. You can't get more than 300 euros out of the bank per day. And let's make this brutally concrete. It's never a good idea to wave cash around on the street, but this is what a grand looks like in euros. This is 1,000 euros, and if tomorrow I go to the airport and leave this country with that and the loose change in my pocket, I'm breaking the law, because that's the limit on the cash you can take out of the country. People with fixed term deposits, they're saving the money for 12, 18 months, will be told they have to keep that money in there.
So, there's just two examples illustrating that the idea that the banks are safe is completely false. It's smoke and mirrors. And I could go on. The whole financial fiat system is crumbling. And it is so corrupt, it is beyond belief. And who pays for all that corruption? We do. The ordinary citizen. We are the one that are getting shilled by the banks. And we are the one that are losing out. You know what Bitcoin's all about, and you understand, a little bit about Bitcoin. So I'm going to use the analogy of how HEX compares to Bitcoin first of all. All right. So I hope you can see this little diagram here. So here is the difference between HEX and Bitcoin. Bitcoin, the granddaddy of them all, has been around for 10 years, and most people understand or at least heard about Bitcoin. You've never heard about HEX. So this is how this works. You buy HEX, and you do that by getting Ethereum. You go to HEX window online and you transform your Ethereum into HEX, and you get HEX at the end of the day, and then you lock it up. So here's our Bitcoin. We get our Bitcoin, one Bitcoin, and we lock it up in a safe, right? We lock it up in a safe for a year. The Bitcoin value when we put it in, let's just use 10,000 US dollars. I wish it was, but we'll use that figure now, 10,000 US dollars. At the same time, we're going to get some HEX. We're going to make one HEX, and we're going to lock it up for the same time period. We're going to lock it up for the same time period, a year in this bank, okay? A year in this bank. Now, what do you think happens after a year when we open up the safe that we put our Bitcoin into? Well, here's what happens. There's one Bitcoin in the bank. And if the price USD has gone up per Bitcoin, we might make, I don't know, maybe in a year's time it's worth 11,000 US dollars per coin. Yippee. Our coin locked up for a year has now given us 1,000 US dollars profit. Fantastic. But this is where HEX differs. And this is why it's the most exciting product you've ever heard of in your life. When I go to unlock my safe with my 1 hex in, guess what? I don't get 1 hex back. I get hundreds of hex back. Hundreds. And even if the US dollar price, let's say it was $1 per coin when I put it into the bank, and then a year later, the price hasn't moved. It's still $1 per coin. But guess what? I've got hundreds of them, and I am exponentially better off than if I had held a Bitcoin for a year. This is what HEX is all about. It's simply a time deposit contract which promises you that whatever amount of HEX that you put into the safe, when you come to take it out at the end of whatever time period that you've locked it up for, you will get more HEX back. It's as simple as that. It's a time deposit account. You don't have to do anything except get into HEX in the first place, and then at the end of the period where you've staked it to, whatever that contract says, you take it out and you get more than you put in. How is it that you get all those HEX back after? Let's just use the time lock period of a year. Let's say you agree to lock up your HEX in a time deposit account for just a year. Well, here's how you get that many more HEX back. This is how the system works. It's a smart contract. And what that means is whatever it tells you at the beginning is what's going to happen. It cannot change because nobody has access to these contracts. They are smart contracts. They're written, they're immutable, they cannot be changed. So when you enter into the contract to lock up your money, it does exactly what it says it tells you it's going to do in a year's time. There's no human interference. There can be no Ponzi scheme involved. There is no scam involved. So understand that. If you've heard from other people, if you've done some research already and you've seen some FUD about HEX, it is completely and utterly wrong. HEX is the most transparent contract that there has ever been invented. Everybody can see exactly what is happening with HEX in any moment in time. And so back to how you make money. How is this going to make you rich? Because that's all you care about. Cryptocurrencies, what they do, the utility of them, I don't care. All I want to know is if I put X amount of money in today, am I going to get more money at the end of the day? Let's say that you've got 1 million HEX. Okay, be about $3,000 investment, something like that today. So we've got 1 million HEX. The first thing is that if you only lock it up for a day, if you have a time deposit contract and you say, right, I'm going to lock it up for the day when I'm going to take it out tomorrow, then you don't get anything extra. There's no bonuses for doing that because you need to lock it up for a certain amount of time. And the way the system works is this. If you lock it up for a year, you get a 20% bonus. And let's just see how that works. So there's 1 million HEX. And if we come over to the right hand side, you can see this figure here. It says effective HEX 1.2 million. So what that means is the system's credited you with 20% more HEX as a reward for locking up your HEX for a year. So the system then says, okay, instead of buying 1 million worth of shares, we're going to buy 1.2 million worth of shares, and today's share rate is 95.587 million per HEX. That's the share rate. That's the share rate for today, and it goes up every single day. So this share rate that you see here is the lowest share rate. The most shares that you can get for your money is happening today, because tomorrow that share rate is going to be less for you. That is to say, you'll get, for the 1 million HEX, you're going to get less shares tomorrow because the share price will go up. Why? Because it's programmed to go up every single day. What we want to know is, can we make any money through buying HEX? And this is where it gets really, really exciting. For those of you who are new to it, then just watch this. We are looking at an investment of 1 million HEX, which is about, I don't know, $3,000 US, something like that. Not a lot of money. But we'll just look at this anyway for an example. Your potential return in HEX works out like this. We put 1 million in, right? We got 1 million from our Ethereum through the Transform lobby. If you lock it up, we'll just lock it up for a year, okay? I don't recommend doing this, but we'll just lock it up for a year. The big payday bonus the shares that we're able to buy, will yield us about 2.2 million HEX just from the big payday pool. The amount of interest that we're going to get will probably be about 180,000. And that's not even including the penalties, but let's just use that figure. We started off with 1 million HEX, and look at this figure. 3.38 million HEX. 3.38 million HEX. Your $3,000 invested today is now worth $11,160. What would happen if the price went to 0.33? Your $3,000 invested is now worth $1.1 million. $1.1 million. This is a life-changing figure. This is the biggest opportunity that you've ever had in your lifetime. With Bitcoin, right at the very beginning, the price was 0.008 at one stage in July 2010, 10 years ago. We saw the price go to 0.08 in a matter of days. So can this happen? Can these price jumps happen in cryptocurrency? Absolutely. Will they? We don't know. But just look at that. $3,000 is now worth 1.1 million. Where else can you do that? You can't. It's only in DeFi. It's only in DeFi. Is your money safe in the banks? No. Is your money safe in cryptocurrency? No. Could you lose it all? Well, you won't lose your HEX. You're always going to have 3.38 million HEX. But what we're talking about now is the US dollar equivalency. USD could be, the value of HEX could be 0. Highly unlikely, but it could be. But it could also be 0.33. It could be 0.33. Okay? Now, let me just explain that. That's a 10,000% increase for those of you who are eagle-eyed and you're saying, how on earth can that even happen? Well, it's already happened. I talked about Bitcoin, right? 0.08, that's what it was at the end of July 2010. I've used a conservative figure of $7,000 and it increased by nearly 9 million %. So if you'd invested $100 back in 2010 and held it, which is the key point, you would be looking at $9 million in your bank account. Ethereum, when it was launched as an ICO, it was $0.31 per coin. I've got 0.15 because that was the prospectus. They decided, no, we'll launch at 0.31. The price of Ethereum went up to a high of $1,500. That was an increase of 1 million %. So had you bought £100, if you'd have bought £100 and you bought at 0.31, it would now worth $1 million. $1 million. HEX is the greatest cryptocurrency that has ever been invented, and I do not even believe that Richard Hart truly understands what it is he's created.